Okay, so I think it's almost 5 minutes after 1, so I think I'll begin. Um, I would ask that I'm hoping that everyone can hear me clearly.
Mhm.
If anyone can't, if they could just speak up and let me know. And also to know that there is a chat column down the side of the screen, so if you have questions, you should be able to type some questions in there, and I can hopefully answer them towards the end of the presentation. Um, can I just ask if people can respond that they hear me clearly?
I
Yes.
hear you very well.
Good, good. Okay. So before we start, if everybody could put their phones on mute, so that will hopefully make things clearer and we don't get any background noise. Um, so I just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone and thank you for joining. This is Jillian Murphy and I'm the Director of Standards Training and Practices here at the Lifeline. And I am going to be the primary point of contact for all questions related to this RFP. So today I'm going to just go through the details of the RFP itself, and then there's going to be plenty of time at the end to ask questions. Um, so let me start by just moving through the slides. Let me just check that this works. Yes. Um, so again, this is one of the RFPs that we have put forward to the network. This is the Lifeline Chat and Text RFP. Um, This funding was made available to the Lifeline. It was supplemental funding given to the Lifeline by SAMHSA, which was to allow us to basically use funds and assign them how we saw fit, obviously with approval from SAMHSA. And we decided to put the majority of this available money into the development of chat and text services across the network. The reason we decided to do this primarily we had been wanting to sort of promote this within the network for some time. We really felt it was important, as we know the use of texting and chat services for people in need in the community has been growing and growing over the years. We at the Lifeline receive many, many requests for online assistance, people who text or chat with us and try and ask if there's any center within the network that could provide that service to them because they just don't feel comfortable calling. As an example of this, in 2010, we received under 400 requests for assistance, and then at the beginning of the same period in 2011, we'd already received well over 1,000 similar requests. And we also support the Veterans Chat service, and we've seen such a huge indication of need within that service. And their volume has increased by roughly 200%. And really, it seems that if we can have this service available to veterans, that the rest of the general population also really needs to have access to such a service. So we really thought it important to use this funding opportunity to increase the capacity of Lifeline centers to provide services in their communities via chat and text, and thereby increase the access to care for those at risk of suicide who really don't feel comfortable calling the line. And also this opportunity was going to assist us in piloting a chat-based subnetwork within the larger Lifeline network. The decision was made to provide the awards to centers with no established chat or text-based services, primarily because the goal is to expand the capacity of the network to respond in this way, and not just to increase or provide funding to existing centers that provide chat. We do, however, have stipends that are available to centers with existing chat services, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So the grant is broken down into two separate sections. One is for instant messaging or chat-based service, and within that service we have up to 10 grants that we can give at $70,000 each for eligible centers that will implement the chat-based service. And the required activity for this is essentially to begin a chat-based service within the crisis center, and to really focus on local community access to online crisis intervention services, and also to participate in a Lifeline chat pilot project that we'll talk about. For the text, the SMS or text-based services, this is, there's fewer of these obviously available, and this is up to 2 grants of $45,000 each for eligible centers that implement a text-based service at their center. The Lifeline is offering access to the Mosio system. In the past, we have used different text services, but for this, for the purposes of this grant, we are going to use Mozio, and that is a free service that will be available through September 30th, 2012, which is essentially the end of the supplemental grant period. So the decision to choose providing chat or text, it's really up to the individual center. Both systems involve computer-based crisis center responses. And by that, I mean some people can be under the impression that in providing text-based services particularly, that their crisis line staff are actually on their phones or on a phone providing this text response. And I just wanted to reiterate that that's not in fact the case. All of the responses and the interactions with the user or the individual at risk are done based on the computer, and you're looking at a large computer screen and you're typing your responses directly on your keyboard, so it's not sort of having to separately use an actual phone, and some people have asked us about that. So in terms of chat, obviously the user needs a computer access and an internet connection. Average chat duration can be anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes. Some centers who currently use chat have reported that they can at times do 2 chats at a time. It's not something that we're saying is required. I'm just sort of highlighting that some centers do that because the chats themselves can sometimes be lengthy. And there's very limited ability to trace, of course. You can sometimes trace back an IP address, but that does not really tell you exactly where the user is based. And for text-based service provision, the user, of course, needs a cell phone and a text plan. And for some people, this can be a cost to the user, depending on the plan that they have. If they have unlimited texting, it may not. But if they're an individual who pays per text, then, of course, those charges will still apply, regardless of whether or not you have your software in place. Also, of course, with text, there's a character limit. They're generally shorter exchanges. But the system, in this case, does provide the user's cell phone number. So in some cases, while cell phones we know are difficult to trace, there is a greater capacity at least to have some sense of who the user is. And here's just a screenshot of the SiteMax software, which is the chat-based software. This is in French, but it's also, you can see translated, but it just gives you a sense of how the chat actually looks on the computer screen. And here's the Mozio screenshot, which is, again, a text service. So the individual user is getting these messages on their phone, but at the actual crisis center, it sort of looks more like a chat interaction on the screen. So just to talk a little bit about the Lifeline chat pilot. This is, of course, as I mentioned, something that we have wanted to put in place for some time. The plan at this point is to really get everybody that receives an award through the RFP to get started with providing chat-based services. And then within a couple of months, hopefully by roughly March of 2012, we would put a portal on the Lifeline website. So essentially, if individuals are looking at the Lifeline website, they would see, call 1-800-273-TALK or the option to chat now. The portal would be open essentially Monday to Friday. We have not decided on exactly the best times yet to have that system open, so we're going to discuss that further. We have, of course, some time to make that decision, and certainly we would facilitate suggestions from the centers, and if people have ideas about the best times that portal should be open, we're certainly open to suggestions for that. Chat users, when they enter into the chat-based system, will be required to register. They can, of course, be anonymous users, but they have to provide some basic information as they register. And it will, of course, need to choose a user ID of some sort to engage in the interaction. They will also have the ability to rate their distress on a scale of 1 to 10 at the beginning of the chat session. And these are going to be just a few questions that will come up on our end, on our website. When somebody clicks Chat Now, it will just say, please, before you enter, just register here, and there'll just be a few questions. They will also, at the end of the session when they sign off, have a voluntary ability to, again, rate their distress. And they will have an understanding that it is a pilot, and the information on the limited hours will be, and the pilot status will be written onto the website itself. Again, the pilot would run from March to September of about 2012. And any Lifeline center that's experienced or has any past use of chat-based service provision can participate in the actual pilot. And that sort of leads me to the chat stipends that we have available. Because we are limiting the RFP awards to centers that have already established or have not already established chat-based services, we did feel that we would like to be able to offer some money to centers that have existing chat capacity. So we will offer up to 7 stipends of $10,000 each to centers that have already established a chat program and that are willing to participate in this Lifeline chat pilot when we started in March. This question has come up from some people, but just to stress, so the RFP eligibility criteria do not apply here in terms of the chat stipends. So in terms of the eligibility that we outlined regarding the top 25% of calls answered, et cetera, that's listed in the RFP, those are not relevant here. The primary eligibility criteria just include the capacity really to provide chat and to provide a quality service and to participate in the pilot. How to apply for that stipend, there is a link on the site, our website now, which brings you to a PDF which describes the process, which really just involves submitting a 1 to 2 page summary describing the program that currently exists at your agency, and that really includes when the program started, the hours of operation that are provided, the current staffing pattern, what the current chat volume is that's managed by your center, the particular software that you use, and really how you maintain a quality service, how you review the quality of the chat interactions that you currently undertake. So it's a very brief application process, and when we get all of those together, we will base the stipend awards on really the experience and the quality of the service provision. Again, the eligibility criteria as written for the RFP itself, the $70,000 awards, include being active members of the Lifeline as of July 1st, 2011. For the quarter immediately preceding the grant award, which is Q2 of 2011, to have answered at least 250 calls and ranked in the top 25% of centers for Lifeline calls answered, or ranked in the top 25% of centers for call answer rates. And we chose these criteria based on, this has been a criteria that we've used in the past to make a decision around eligible centers. And if people have questions around where their center falls within this 25% or really across the whole network distribution, we can provide that, and we can talk about that at the end of the presentation. And if people have questions about that, they can certainly contact me. In addition, centers have to be in operation 24/7. Again, as I said, not have existing chat or text services. Be willing to share any tools, resources, or models developed in connection with this RFP. So if you develop protocols or practices that you think are particularly effective, we may ask if you could share that with other centers providing chat or text services and possibly post it on our website for other people to access. Utilize Lifeline supported software, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And if providing chat services, specifically that centers work with Contact USA towards chat accreditation. And currently Contact USA is the only accrediting body that has developed a specific chat accreditation process. And there are links to details around that available also on the members only site. We have provided a summary of what the accreditation categories and what the process entails. And also, again, if providing chat services, that the requirement is to participate in the pilot for a minimum of 4 hours a day, Monday to Friday, again, at a time that will be decided. The additional materials that we made available on our members-only site include a list of the centres that are eligible to apply, lifeline guidances or guidelines for implementing chat and text services. And this is a draft document that's sort of a work in progress, but it should give you some ideas around staffing or training individuals at your centre for providing these services. Again, the Contact USA chat accreditation information is there, and also some information on Sitemax and Mozio, where you can look through information or PDFs that are available that sort of show you in more detail how these programs look and the services that they can provide. Now, the specific components of the RFP, they're pretty standard. We did try to cut them down as much as possible and make them sort of reduce the application process and make it the least burdensome we could for centers. The abstract is, as is typical, just a short summary of your proposal, but you should be able to discern from that abstract exactly what you're proposing to do within the rest of the actual application. The project narrative, this is 8 pages maximum, and it includes 8 pages maximum for each of the sections A through D. The progress to date, the proposed approach for implementation, the actual plan and staffing, and the performance assessment and data. And then there's supporting documentation. There's no page limit to anything else that you want to add to your application, including the budget and the budget justification piece. So in terms of Section A, the progress to date, really just focus on briefly describing your organization and the hotline. Of course, keep that as brief as you can, because obviously we know already a significant amount about those, but just to sort of introduce your agency. Discuss the organization's experience in providing crisis intervention services, particularly if over email, chat, or text-based. Again, as the requirement is not to have existing services in place, this is just really referring to if you happen to have just experience maybe providing it in another area of your agency or anything in this realm that you might think is relevant that you want to apply. But of course, we do understand that some people will not have anything to contribute in this section. Describe the community need for chat or text-based services, what you feel would be the response to you providing this service locally. Maybe explain why you haven't entered this field to date, why you've decided now to pursue this, and any obstacles or problems that you feel you might encounter in providing crisis intervention services via chat or text messages, and how you would address these obstacles. Section B is the proposed approach. Explain why you've chosen to provide either the chat or text message service and how you plan to implement the chosen service, including the software you intend to utilize and why, if you've chosen an alternate software, your plan for staffing the service, how you're going to train staff, specifically how you'll supervise staff in this service provision and ensure quality of service. What sort of hours of service do you anticipate being able to provide? Have you thought about approaches for serving youth, as what we tend to find is that young people are the primary users of the chat and text-based services? What your plan is for ensuring that chats are answered as they enter your system, and what your plan is for advertising the availability of this service locally once you have put it in place. And Section B continued just to clearly describe activities that will be supported with the stipend funds, any risks, again, associated with what you propose. But a very important piece of this section is to describe plans for sustainability of this service provision. And the capacity for centers to maintain the chat and text program beyond September 30th, 2012 is going to be a key factor in determining award recipients, primarily because as we mentioned, the ultimate goal is really for us to really work on trying to provide a sub-network of chat responders within the network. And so to sort of put a lot of effort into establishing these programs and training staff and thinking of practices and policies and protocols within the centers for a short period of time is not practical. We really want to feel that centers will be able to sustain it beyond the actual end of September 2012. So it's just an important piece to be aware of, that it is an important focus of the evaluation process. Again, this sort of repeats a little bit, presenting your plan for implementing and managing the supplemental activities. I guess anything in and above or additional to the issues that you have previously described. Particularly a timeline for implementation to show key activities and milestones that will be met along the way, and responsible staff. And identify any cash or in-kind contributions that would be made by other partnering organizations or your own organization in terms of maybe in-kind staffing or contributions. The performance assessment and data includes just providing an estimate of the number of chats and texts that you anticipate responding to monthly. I know this is probably a difficult number to come up with, but I think if you can just outline how you established this number, it's not, if we feel it's completely off base or you're really overestimating what you can do, we can just really let you know that following the review of the application. It's not going to act negatively or impede your application in any way, but it's just to sort of think through how many chats or texts based on what you know that you feel you could respond to daily and then obviously monthly. And the focus on anticipating that number is really on local service provision. We're not asking you to estimate the volume that you may achieve through a Lifeline pilot. That's something that at the Lifeline we will look at and try to manage. And you also will be required to report quarterly on the progress made. While we say quarterly, I think by the time centers get given the awards and get their systems up and running, there obviously won't be sort of fully defined quarters, but we will send out rough reporting guidelines and dates for submission of any reports. In terms of data collection, much information that we would like to gather so that we can really evaluate the effectiveness of the program is information that we hope we can gain directly from the user or ourselves through the software system. When an individual is entering the program and is asked to register, they will be asked just their age, their gender, the primary problem, whether they have thoughts of suicide, and the degree of distress, again on a scale of 1 to 10, just upon entering the chat. And that's all that they will be asked to fill in as they enter the chat program. Again, as I mentioned, when they leave, the degree of distress, it will be a voluntary piece where they can opt to again fill that in. And so that's information that we'll collect directly from our website as people enter. Aggregate data that is available to the Lifeline would be the number of chats that your center receives and the average length of that chat. We will be able to gather that data ourselves, so centers will not have to submit any of the information on this page. But elements that will have to be submitted by the center for each chat that they receive includes the username, which is basically whatever identifying information they gave. Maybe it's just a case record number or a user ID that they chose upon entering. The date and time of the chat, and basically just 3 questions: whether the individual had suicidal ideation, yes or no; if they were at imminent risk of suicide, yes or no; and whether emergency rescue was dispatched. And the current options we have for that include yes, that emergency rescue was dispatched, no, that the risk was reduced really by the end of the chat and it wasn't deemed necessary, or no, it wasn't dispatched simply because there was no ability to locate the user. And so it's primarily those 3 questions that need to be collected. And centers must describe the plan to collect and submit this data. At the Lifeline, we are going to try our best to facilitate any data submission. So we may talk further with centers around seamless ways that we can collect this data. But for right now, this is not information that's automatically collected, obviously, at the beginning of a session, and is something that is information that the crisis center themselves is going to have to obtain. In terms of text data collection, that's a little bit different. Aggregate data that's directly available to the Lifeline includes the number of unique users that access the text service and the average number of text exchanges per use. Elements that the center is going to have to submit for each chat include age and gender only if possible. Obviously, that might not be something that comes across in a text. It's not something that you can sort of stop your interaction to ask for. But if it's evident or the person volunteers this, then age or gender. The primary problem, the crisis center staff should have some sense of the primary reason that the individual is contacting the Lifeline. And again, the same 3 questions around whether the individual presented with suicidal ideation, whether it was acute risk, and whether emergency rescue was dispatched. And just a general note again on the software. I did mention that there's 2 software packages that the Lifeline can provide free of charge to the centers. One is Sitemax for the chat program, and the other is Mozio for text. Alternate software is acceptable, but it must be somewhat compatible with the Sitemax and Mozio softwares. And so if you are proposing to use alternate software, you will need to connect with us to just ensure that it's approved by us as something that's compatible in some ways. And the reason for that is really so that we can go in and obtain the data that we need, and that we do have the ability to effectively and efficiently route chat users that enter our website to the individual centers. The benefits of using the Lifeline provided software, of course, include that it's free and the data is available, as I mentioned, and we can provide probably more detailed supports on the system and issues that may come up with the use of the system. But again, of course, we do understand that some centers may be using alternate software applications that provide the option to also use chat within that system and may want to continue to use that. So, of course, we'll talk to individual centers as that comes up. Again, if you're using alternate software, if we can't receive any of the basic data, you would have to submit that data yourself. It's important to understand that payment for the alternate software is the responsibility of the center, and so that would be something that you'd have to put within your budget. So it's something just to remember to include in your budget plans. And again, we're going to make every effort that we can to support any alternate software to make data submission as easy as possible. Budget justification, just to provide a narrative justification for any items that you include. Include description of existing resources that may be used in conjunction with this RFP, but only provide justification for personnel and resources that are directly related to activities that you propose under this RFP. So we don't need to know about other adjunct services, just anything that's directly related to the RFP. And once the applications are submitted, they're going to be reviewed by based on the evaluation criteria that we listed and by an independent team of reviewers that have no current affiliations with the Lifeline or with crisis centers within the Lifeline. We have done this in the past with other RFPs that we've had. And so we will receive the application, and the application will just be sent directly out to this group of reviewers, and they will rate them and send us back their reports. So key dates, the RFP submissions are due by 5 p.m. on November 14th, and we hope to send them immediately out to the reviewers and have a turnaround from the reviewers towards the end of November. Obviously, Thanksgiving sort of falls in there, so by the end, hopefully, of November, we will have the decision on the awards, and mid-December, we would announce those awardees. And the same application timeline applies to the stipends as well as to the awards. So for general questions, of course, around anything, you should email me. It's much better to email me than call. And particularly given that I can take your question, and anything I respond to individually, I would also respond to as a group. So I won't take questions from one person and respond directly to them without notifying everybody that's eligible or everybody within the network of the answer to that question, so that everyone has a fair, shot at the application and receiving the award. So any questions would be posted on our, I guess, on our blog or website. Can't remember now which one, but so that everybody gets to see the FAQs. So I think that's sort of quickly going through the general facts about the RFP. So if people have questions, I can do my best to answer them. If not, I'll certainly just, write down all questions and get back to people following the actual webinar. And so if people want to type them or ask, you could unmute and ask me now. I see one question that's come in on the chat section here from Brett. Do you have any projected volume for chat and for SMS? I haven't got anything written up, but I can certainly provide projected estimates. I can review the number there's two separate issues. There's an estimate of the volume that you would plan on receiving if you advertise locally that the service is available. And then there's the actual volume that you think that your crisis center, the capacity that you could manage. And so while chats can take, anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes, you may think that it might only be possible to take 4 to 5 chats within an hour for one staff person when you're estimating how many chats you could take. But you also need to try and bear in mind how many people may access your service, whether your staff would have the capacity to take 2 chats at once. Texts, I think you primarily individuals take 1 at a time. I probably would recommend that people take 1 chat at a time until you're very, very used to actually managing the chats. But that's something that I can certainly look into other centers that do chat, what their basic numbers are, and then post that for everyone to see. Lizanne Wick has asked what percentage of IM, chat, or text contacts have been noted as imminent risk by centers doing this already. My understanding is very, very few at this stage, but I will confirm that and I will respond to that again publicly.
Hi, this is Kim from Contact Lifeline in Wilmington, Delaware. And we started chat the 1st of October, and we're looking towards the applying for the 10,000. Now, since we use iCarol, is that going to affect the possibility of not getting the funding because we started with iCarol?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
No, with iCarol, I think iCarol is really the primary, alternate software that people are probably going to use for the chat service. Again, we understand that some centers, use iCarol for the basic call center requirements, and so it's easier to sort of add on the chat component for that. We are doing our best to see that we can make those two compatible and see how we can also maximize our ability to get data from iCarol, so that the burden is sort of more on us for the data collection than the centers. But we certainly are going to work with users of iCarol and do our best to sort of make that seamless as possible.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hi, this is Beth Schultz from Samaritans.
Hi, Beth.
We have been very interested in launching a chat program for a while. We've had a working group working towards the program. We have not launched, but we've purchased software and put together manuals. We're in process, but we have not launched the service yet. Will we be eligible for the chat RFP?
I would say yes, if you haven't already launched it, so it's not like you're no, so it's not like you're a center that's experienced in doing it. What software did you purchase?
We're working with Contact USA, so we have iCarol.
So you have iCarol. So again, the same issue applies with iCarol. We're going to do our best to ensure that that's compatible. If you haven't launched it, then I would say yes, you can apply for the
Wonderful. Thank you.
stipend. Yep. Okay. Let me see. Sandra, sorry, go ahead.
My name is Allison Trammell. I'm calling from Behavioral Health Link in Atlanta. What kind of technical assistance will the Lifeline offer other than what you had just said? Are there a policy and procedure that we can borrow from, or any other technical writing that we could use to kind of structure
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Currently on the, I don't know if you looked at the guidelines that are available on the website.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't.
Okay, so maybe if you look at those and then see from that, because that sort of provides information on what you need to think about in terms of putting practices in place for the chat and text services. So if you have questions after you look at that, then let me know and I'll be happy to respond.
Okay. We have another question here in regards to calls or chatters, I guess, waiting in queue, and how is that kind of thing happen? Does the software that you are proposing, does that have some provision for that, or how is that worked?
I actually do not know the answer to that question. So I'm going to speak with IT and individuals who know more about the software, and I'm going to find out for them, and then I'll post an answer to that for you. I'll find out from current. I can find out also from centers that currently undertake the chat. How they manage individuals waiting in queue, and there are times that some people just shut down access to the chat portal on their site while they're busy. Do you know what I mean? Like the chat portal on their own site will come up as busy if they don't have anyone available to actually answer that chat. I know that when we do the chat pilot and put the portal on our own website, we will be routing it to centers. So if some centers are overloaded and busy, we will route it to another center.
Okay.
I think when all centers are currently busy, it would just tell the individual user that right now people are busy and that there's a wait time before the chat would go through. I'd have to check on that for you, whether it ends up being held on our end before it goes to a center, or if it ends up getting to a center and gets waited in a queue, like you're saying, on your end. That's what I will check for you.
Thank you. And just one other question in regards to the specs for the current software that you're suggesting. Are there any specs for alternative software? Because we were thinking of another software called Chat Blazer. Wanting to know if that might be compatible.
We don't know anything about that one. So it would be up to you to sort of determine whether or not that it was beneficial for you to use that and to sort of make the case within your application. I mean, is there a reason?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, is there a specific reason to choose that? Sorry, I think we're talking over each other. I think what you're going to ask is if there's any way that we could assess the compatibility of it. Is that
okay?
I think that might be what you're going to ask. I would tend to think that there's going to probably be limitations around alternate chats. That I think that we can use Sitemax. We could probably add iCarol. I think to add a third type may be difficult. We can certainly look at how compatible it is. But again, any reporting requirements for that would then be back on the center to actually manage and then submit. And then also any cost associated with it we would not cover. So yeah, just to know that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have other questions? Let me just see something here, and I can ask a question. I see that Sandri has a question regarding eligibility. We currently have limited texting available to our community, but no chat services, which we're interested in. Since the awards are separated, are we eligible for the chat award, or does the fact that we have a text program make us ineligible? I would say that if you have no current chat service, then you are eligible to apply to provide a chat service. And sort of that's as clean an answer as I can give, because if you have a limited texting, then obviously it still serves the purpose of increasing and expanding the capacity to provide chat. If somebody tells me there's an answer different to that, I will let you know, but as far as I can see, that you would be eligible.
And I have a question. This is Kate with 211 Lifeline. We have chat in place, but are looking at adding the text. Would that make us also eligible for applying for the RFP?
I believe so. I'm just checking with somebody now as we speak. Let's see. I don't know actually if she's on. I'm just checking now as we speak.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, 1 second.
Oh, that's okay.
Other questions while I'm...
Actually, I do have one. After the grant is over, are we still committed to this chat software, or, I mean, you know, going forward after the grant period is over, you
I'm
want
sorry,
to look into...
who is this asking the question? Sorry.
This is Allison again from...
oh, Allison,
Atlanta.
hi. Yeah.
Hi. You know, kind of looking at another software program, but if we wanted to change up, I guess, of course, after the grant period was over, we could switch back. Are you still going to continue to monitor, I guess, collect data from other centers after the grant period is over?
No. The period of time in which we would collect that specific data just applies to the period of time where we provide the supplemental funding. But yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, if you are choosing or you want to use a different software, then I think it's just really a matter of explaining also the background to that. I guess you've evaluated it in some capacity and feel that it's the best one for your center. Again, I mean, we can't require basically after the supplemental period that you continue to use anything. We can't make requirements about you using a specific software following that. But a key piece of evaluating your application will be your plans for sustainability beyond the funding period. So we can't require software, but we would like to see thought put into how the actual practice will continue. So I guess it's just up to you whether you feel it's worth the time spent investing in training staff in one software package and then switching to another.
Okay, thank you, Jillian.
You know what? And it may work out that, you know, your software is highly compatible, but I just can't answer that right now. Sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Jillian, this is Kate at 211 Lifeline again. Can you let me know the answer when you hear back from the other person about whether we can...
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm just waiting on that right now. I think the answer to it is yes. I'm assuming it is, but just 1 minute.
Yes. I'm here. So the question that's been...
It's really just if somebody has currently provides chat services, can they apply for text and vice versa? And so Foundry was saying that they have very limited texting available in their community, but they've no chat services, and she's interested in applying for that. So my answer to that was that if she had no chat services currently, then it fulfilled the focus on developing the network, and so she would be eligible to apply for chat.
Agree.
So then the same question was asked about text, so I'm assuming it applies the same way, that if you have a chat-based service but you really want to add text to it, can you apply for text?
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so the answer is yes. Yeah.
I mean, the whole impetus for this is trying to get increase the capacity of centers to
Yeah.
these technologies. So,
Yeah.
in an ideal world, I think from Lifeline's perspective, one day in the future, you will be able to go to the Lifeline website and see 3 options. You know, call a number, chat, or text.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet. So let's do everything we can to get people there.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me just see. I see some questions on the site. Can one application include a proposal to implement texting and chat, or do we have to choose one? You have to choose one. If we had text in the chat, can we apply? Yeah, we answered. Will you make your PowerPoint available after the call? Yes, we will post this on the members-only website. This webinar will be posted for everyone to access after this call today. I think that's it. I just want to encourage, again, my email is there. Just please, as you think of questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I'll continue to post any on the members-only site or blog as they come in and let everybody know the general answers. So I wish you all good luck. And again, don't forget the final date is November 14th at 5 p.m. So we expect to hear from you all.